It's important to remember that we got to this divided place in our country because of the targeted, specific, and continual psychological warfare that we've been put under by our enemies, both foreign and domestic. And it's not only that the inherent racism and bigotry and misogyny that exists in this country, it's not only that that has been magnified and amped to such a degree that it is maybe the most dangerous that it's been in decades, but it's that our own affinity groups, those circles and communities where people come together to share the things they're passionate about, those have been infiltrated. And those have been, again, twisted and skewed to such a degree that these groups have been used against us to target us and then to force us to target each other. Now, this isn't conspiracy or conjecture. This has long been a known fact. You can look to the Cambridge Analytica lawsuit. You can look to executive orders signed by both Biden and Trump in his previous presidency. And you can look at the sanctions gone through the United Nations against those countries for the psychological warfare that they've put us under. So this isn't disputed. This is a fact. And I'm going to tell you how I have seen it firsthand. And I guarantee you have too. Watch me unpack this. If you've ever been a part of a Facebook group, and in particular a large Facebook community, this is a primary place that this has been happening. The first time I noticed this was back in 2014 when I was Whole Foods vegan. And not only did I run a Whole Foods plant-based blog, but I was in a bunch of Whole Foods plant-based, vegan, clean eating Facebook groups. Now, in the beginning, most of these groups focused as a place for support. Recipe sharing, where can I find this? What sort of substitute do you use? How do you stick to the lifestyle, etc. They were very mutually supportive. But over time, these groups began to be infiltrated by people and links and things that began to spread ideas about food in general and our toxic food system. Now, again, this began as something we were all concerned about, which drew us to the lifestyle in the first place. We're concerned about our food supply. We're concerned about the health of ourselves and our families. And so this was a natural place for us to share these resources. But over time, the resources became more and more, we'll say, unhinged. Some really unbalanced ideas began to infiltrate these groups, and it grew to a point where I completely left because I was seeing an attack on science and unfounded ideas being taken as gospel, and there was so much infighting causing people to attack each other if they didn't follow to the letter these espoused ideologies of the group. And so I did eventually end up leaving these groups. And now here we are in 2025, and that movement became the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. And we've seen that infiltrate the highest levels of government, where there is an all-out attack on science. I also saw this unfold in spiritual groups, especially in 2020, in the early days of the pandemic, in non-denominational, new age, woo-woo spiritual groups, when QAnon ideologies began to infiltrate those spaces. Not only did I see the members become increasingly ungrounded, unstable, and radicalized by these false ideas, I saw the leaders of these groups become infiltrated as well, not only in what they were sharing as personal ideologies, but the channeled information that they were bringing through, it changed. Where I had followed some of these people for years, they turned and they became something dark and unbalanced that was then glomming onto other people in the group and making the group continually unhinged. And it was many of these very specific ideologies that led to the January 6th uprising and insurrection. I've also seen this happen in motherhood groups. And this is where it is not necessarily or primarily an international threat, but a domestic one, where we've seen evangelical Christianity infiltrate these groups and become the trad wife movement. And we're now seeing that movement being weaponized not only against women in the country, but it is affecting policy in this country. And this is also where you've seen an overlap of that MAHA movement, and it's been called the crunchy to alt-right pipeline, where people who are in these holistic wellness and motherhood groups who are just coming together to support each other and learn more holistic ways of living in a healthy way, these groups have been co-opted by dangerous ideologies that have now infiltrated their way into American politics on every level. Now, because this infiltration began at the grassroots level, in these groups where they're just ordinary citizens, ordinary people coming together, that's what makes it so subtle. And we can't overtly see it as brainwashing done by people in power. But the data, the studies, the research shows that yes, that did in fact happen, and I'll include some resources at the end of this video. And all of this has contributed to the illusion that we ought to be at war with each other. As someone who has seen this spread in those groups firsthand, I can tell you it wasn't simply just the ideas, the links to bad or faulty science. It's the way the bots in these groups perpetuated abuses against other members and taught others to do the same. That was the moral baseline that was set in those groups, was harshly attacking those people who didn't agree or who questioned it or who wanted to post something that was contrary to what was shared. They not only attacked us from the inside out, but they taught us to do the same. And that became the assumption that we have about Americans. Americans are stupid. Americans are inherently hateful. Americans believe delusional conspiracies. And that is the result of the psychological manipulation over a number of decades in this country. And that's why it's so important to unpack this now, as we are on a path to creating unity again, to remembering that without all of that, and underneath all of that, we're all just people who basically want the same thing. We want to be safe. We want to be protected. We want to be able to afford life in this country. And even those people who are using racist and bigoted and misogynistic ideologies, those were inflamed. They have been taught to hate people who are different than them. They have been taught that the reason they can't survive in this economy is because of minorities or because of women or because of the enemy that is within. This is not true. This was by design. They infiltrated the groups, they listened to what we care about, and they twisted those passions and taught us to hate each other for being different. So when we talk about people being brainwashed, it's not only into MAGA, it's in all these pipelines, all these ideologies, where our differences have been stoked to a fever pitch. So they don't need to attack us from the outside. We're already attacking each other from within. Now, as we walk this path to unity, there will be a reckoning. There will be a point where people realize their faults and what they have fallen for, and thus the abuses they heaped on other people. That is an inevitable part of any awakening, if it's managed, if it's done well. And that's why at this moment in time, people who are beginning to wake up and who are starting to see a moment of gentleness is required so that they can get to the full point of their awakening where they realize the harm done and they can take full accountability themselves and continue to take steps to make reparations. None of this will be easy, especially not for them, but it is what is necessary to bring actual true unity to this country again, or perhaps for the first time. We are evolving as a society. We are trying to include these affinity groups, these marginalized people. We're trying to make a seat for them at the table so that everyone can thrive in this country in ways that they never have before. So through all of this, we have to remember who the true enemy is. It's not each other. It's those who have pitted us against each other. And that, as a guiding light, can help us find our way to unity.